In the dead of the Soviet winter, February 1959, a search party pushes through the brutal, windswept wilderness of the northern Ural Mountains. They are looking for 9 student hikers, all experienced mountaineers, who are now more than a week overdue. The search is centered on the slopes of a mountain known to the indigenous Mansi people as Kholit Syakhl. In their language, it means the mountain of the dead. After days of searching, they find it. A single tent, collapsed and nearly buried by the driving snow. It's unnervingly silent. There are no bodies, no signs of a struggle with an outside force. But as the searchers draw closer, they see something that makes no sense. The entrance flap is still secured. Instead, a long, deliberate gash has been cut through the side of the canvas. A gash made from the inside. Peering in, the mystery deepens into sheer impossibility. Inside the tent is everything the 9 hikers would need to survive. Their boots are lined up, warm coats, hats, and gloves are neatly stored. Their axes, knives, and a flask of vodka sit untouched. Their maps and food rations are all accounted for. It looks as if the hikers are moments away from returning. But the footprints outside the tent tell a different story. They show people walking away from the shelter, some wearing only socks, or even barefoot, heading down the desolate slope and into the killing cold. These were not novices. They were seasoned veterans of the Russian wilderness, led by the capable Igor Dyatlov. Every instinct, every moment of their training would have screamed that to leave your shelter in these sub-zero conditions without proper clothing was not a risk. It was suicide. The scene presented the searchers with an impossible contradiction. The first chapter in a mystery that has endured for over 60 years. It left them with a single chilling question that has never been answered. What could have been so terrifying, so immediate, that it forced 9 experienced hikers to slosh their way out of their only shelter and flee to a certain death? From the slashed tent, the investigators discovered the first clue: 9 distinct sets of footprints, descending the slope toward the forest line a mile away. The tracks painted a picture of surreal, ordered panic. Some were made by bare feet, others by feet wearing only a single sock, pressing into the lethal snow. This wasn't the chaotic scattering of a group ambushed by a wild animal. They had left in a hurry, yes, but they had walked, not run, away from their only shelter. They moved with a strange, deliberate purpose into a landscape where the temperature hovered near 30 degrees below zero, and the wind cut like a razor. The trail led them down the long, exposed slope to the edge of the woods. There, beneath a towering, ancient cedar tree, the search party found the first signs of a desperate last stand. The remains of a small fire lay scattered, evidence that the hikers had possessed the presence of mind to seek warmth. And lying next to it were the first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. They were found stripped down to their underwear. No shoes, no coats, no hats to protect them from the elements. It was a scene that defied all logic. An autopsy would later confirm they died of hypothermia. But the circumstances were baffling. Their hands were a testament to a brutal struggle not with an attacker, but with the tree itself. Their knuckles were raw, their fingers torn from frantically breaking off lower branches for firewood. The larger branches higher up the cedar, some 5 meters from the ground, were also snapped off, suggesting one of them had scrambled up the trunk. But why? Was it a desperate attempt to gather more firewood? Or was it to see something, to get a better vantage point? Looking back up the dark, silent slope toward the tent they had so inexplicably abandoned. If they could make a fire, why couldn't they save themselves? Why were they nearly naked in a blizzard? The discovery at the cedar tree offered no answers. It only deepened the shadows, creating a disturbing tableau of rational action mixed with sheer insanity. They had fought for their lives, but they had lost, and 7 of their friends were still missing in the vast, frozen wilderness. The search continued. Having found the 2 men at the tree line, the party fanned out, slowly working their way back up the immense, empty slope that separated the cedar tree from the abandoned tent. 300 meters from the tree line, they found the next body, Igor Dyatlov, the 23-year-old leader of the expedition. He lay on his back, frozen solid in the snow. In one hand, he clutched a single, small birch branch. His other arm was raised, bent at the elbow, as if shielding his face from an unseen blow. Though better dressed than the first 2 victims, he was still without a coat or proper boots. He was facing the tent. Further up the slope, another 180 meters on, they found Rustam Slobodin. He too was facing the tent, his body positioned as if he had been crawling uphill when he finally collapsed. Investigators initially ruled his death as simple hypothermia, but a later examination would reveal a significant 17-centimeter fracture in his skull, the first sign of severe, violent trauma among the group. Just 150 meters from the camp, they found the 5th body, that of Zina Kolmogorova. Of the 3, she had made it the furthest, a testament to her incredible endurance. The scene was one of tragic, frozen desperation. The snow around her was disturbed, her hands and knuckles bloodied and abraded. She had been fighting her way back, crawling on her hands and knees, clawing at the frozen ground until her heart finally gave out. She died looking toward the shelter that could have saved her. This discovery changed everything. These 3 were not fleeing the tent. They were desperately trying to get back to it. This fact shattered any simple theory of a singular event at the camp. It suggested a terrifyingly complex timeline. First, a threat appears at the tent, forcing everyone out into the cold. Then, the group splits to remain by the fire at the tree line, while these 3, the strongest of the group, begin a heroic, doomed attempt to return for supplies, for gear, perhaps for help. But they never made it. One by one, they fell on that open, unforgiving slope, consumed by the cold and an invisible exhaustion. The question was no longer just what forced them out, but what prevented them from getting back in. 5 were now accounted for, but the 4 who remained missing would hold the darkest secrets of all. For 2 months, the mountain held its silence. The search was paused, the heavy winter snows making any further progress impossible. It wasn't until the first week of May, as the spring thaw began to reveal the ground beneath, that the search party returned, determined to find the final for hikers. 75 meters from the cedar tree, deeper into the woods, they found a ravine carved out by a stream, probing the deep, compacted snow. A searcher's pole struck something soft. They began to dig. For meters down, they uncovered the final and most disturbing chapter of the Dyatlov Pass incident. It was a crude den, dug hastily into the snow. The floor was lined with severed pine branches, a desperate, final attempt to insulate themselves from the lethal ground. And inside, they found the last for hikers, Nicholas the Bobrinyol, Alexander Kolovatov, Semyon Zolotayev, and Lyudmila Dubinina. At first glance, it seemed they had simply succumbed to the cold in their final refuge. But the autopsies that followed would uncover a level of violence so extreme and so bizarre. It would forever elevate the case from a tragic accident to an event of high strangeness. The medical examiner, Dr. Boris Vozrozdeny, delivered a report that was chilling in its clinical precision. Nicholas the Bobrinyol had suffered a severe, crushing fracture to the side of his skull. Alexander Kolovatov was found largely unharmed, dead from hypothermia. But it was the other two that defied all explanation. Both Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotayev had sustained catastrophic chest trauma. Their ribs were shattered, subjected to an immense compressive force that the doctor compared to the impact of a high-speed car crash. And yet, there were no corresponding external injuries, no bruises, no lacerations, no soft tissue damage on their skin. It was as if they had been crushed by an immense, invisible weight. And the horror did not end there. Semyon Zolotayev's eye sockets were empty, and Lyudmila Dubinina, the most infamous and disturbing detail of the entire case, was found to be missing her tongue, her eyes, and parts of her lips and facial tissue. The final piece of the puzzle was perhaps the strangest of all. Tests on the victim's clothing revealed that several items, particularly on Dubinina and Kolovatov, were significantly radioactive. The source of this contamination was never found. The medical examiner was unequivocal in his conclusion. The force that inflicted these injuries was far beyond the capacity of a human being. He stated that no man could have delivered such blows, especially without leaving any external marks. The official explanation for the missing tissue was natural scavenging and decomposition in the wet environment of the den. But for many, this felt insufficient. The puzzle was now complete, but the image it created was impossible. A silent force that crushes bone but doesn't break skin. A terror that drives 9 people into a blizzard. A horror that leaves behind radiation and mutilation. The question was no longer what happened to the hikers, but what kind of impossible thing had they encountered on the mountain of the dead? Faced with a case file that read more like a work of surreal horror than an official investigation, the Soviet state did what it did best. It buried the story. In late May 1959, just 3 weeks after the discovery of the final bodies, lead investigator Lev Ivanov abruptly closed the case. His final report was a masterpiece of deliberate vagueness. The official cause of death was attributed to an unknown compelling natural force. The files were classified and sent to a secret archive, and the public was left with silence. Years later, long after the fall of the Soviet Union, Ivanov would break that silence. He claimed he had been ordered by high-level regional officials to terminate the investigation and classify his findings. He spoke of personal observations and reports from other eyewitnesses, including other hikers and meteorologists in the area of bright flying spheres or shining orbs in the sky on the night of the incident. This admission fueled decades of speculation about a government cover-up. Over the years, dozens of theories have been put forward, each attempting to be the single key that unlocks the mystery. The most accepted is a small slab avalanche, hitting the tent and forcing a panicked evacuation, with the crushing injuries caused by the weight of the snow. But this fails to explain why the hikers' tracks were so orderly, why the tent wasn't flattened, or why experienced men would camp in such a place to begin with. Other theories point to a secret military weapons test, a source that could explain the concussive injuries and the radioactivity, but no declassified document has ever supported this. More esoteric theories speak of infrasound generated by wind patterns, creating a wave of irrational panic. But this cannot explain the physical violence. Each theory explains a piece of the puzzle, but none can explain it all. No single explanation accounts for a slashed tent and fractured skulls, for radioactivity and a missing tongue, for a barefoot, orderly retreat and a desperate, crawling return. The enduring power of the Dyatlov Pass incident is not in any one theory, but in the collective failure of all of them. The only thing we know for sure is what the evidence tells us. That in the winter of 1959, 9 of Russia's toughest and brightest young people encountered something on a desolate slope above the Ural Mountains. Something so powerful it crushed their bodies, so terrifying it shattered their minds, and so immediate it forced them to choose a certain freezing death in the dark over facing it for one more second. The mountain of the dead keeps its secrets. The case remains open in the court of public opinion. Dozens of theories exist, from the rational to the bizarre, and none can explain everything. Now, we turn it over to you. Which theory do you find most compelling? An avalanche, a military test, or something else entirely? Share your analysis in the comments below. And if you believe history's darkest chapters must be brought to light, subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss an investigation.